Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about the ribbon-tail worm and why it's something that is overlooked and definitely serves a place in your tackle box. So go ahead and stay tuned. So first we'll go ahead and start with the standard, or what is called the standard size ribbon-tail is the 7.5 or 7-inch ribbon-tail worm. Now ribbon-tail worms come in all kinds of sizes, not so much shapes. There isn't really any variance in the style. It's a very simple bait, so there isn't much change other than the size, and it's just length. It's how long it is. You have some that are in the 4 to 5 inch range. This one's in the 7.5, and again, this is kind of your standard. Then you have your larger worm, and this is your 10.5. So compared to the smaller size, there's quite a difference. And even compared to your standard size, there's still a big difference. And also just in the body size alone. The 10.5, as you get longer, you also get more body. Now typically I'm more apt to throw the larger size, the 10.5. That's just kind of what I prefer, but there's nothing wrong with the standard size. I do fish them also. Now, when it comes to picking a size, I kind of have my belief in a 10.5 because I feel like the worm is kind of a confidence thing. I feel like fish are usually pretty comfortable eating a worm, so it usually doesn't hurt to go a size, to a larger size. Also, it's just a bigger meal. Uh, the worm is a pretty enticing bait for fish, it seems. It's a very tight, there's not a lot going on, but yet it does move a lot of water, and it looks really good. And I feel like it's just something it's hard for fish to pass up. So whenever you have that paired with, I feel like it's a confident, fish are pretty confident in eating it. I feel like those two just make it very easy to fish a large bait. Now, I have more confidence in a 10.5 than I do a regular size, just because that's just what I throw more often. And I also have some exact places I like to put these, and we'll get into that towards the end of the video on whenever I go over where. So here's a few ways that I prefer to rig up my ribbon-tail worms. Most commonly, I'm going to Texas rig, and my standard hook whenever I'm Texas rigging a ribbon-tail worm is a offset shank worm hook. Now this happens to be a Trocar with the Pro V bend, which I'm a big fan of. This is my favorite hook for fishing a ribbon-tail worm whenever I want to Texas rig. I'm not sponsored by Trocar. I'm not sponsored by any of the brands mentioned in this video. My only sponsors are GoPro and Riot Baits. This actually is a Riot Baits worm, but these haven't been made for a long time. You can't get them, so that's why I didn't mention that this is Riot, because you just can't get them anymore. But most commonly, I'm going to be Texas rigging them, and this is my hook of choice. Of course, you can fish them on any other offset shank or a straight shank or a EWG, whatever you have the most confidence in Texas rigging. This is just what I feel is the right tool for the job. Next is whenever I like to fish them on a grass line, if I know I'm going to be on the outside, or if I'm on a ledge, and that's a shaky head. Now normally I like to throw a shaky head kind of in a power fishing sense. I like to throw them on heavier line and a bait caster and things like that. So I do keep a lot of heavy shaky heads. I think this is a 5/8. Yeah, this is a 5/8 shaky head. So it's got some weight to it, but it goes really well. It handles the 10.5 inch worms really well, and it handles the 7-inch worms like nothing. So shaky head is something that's great to throw on a ledge. These are awesome to throw on ledges or anything offshore structure. These really do shine when put on a shaky head. Now there are some common misconceptions on when and where to fish a ribbon-tail worm. Uh, the wind, you'll hear a lot of times guys say that, fish them during the summer. The summertime is great for a ribbon-tailed worm. And then it seems like guys put them up and forget about them for the fall. And they just glance over them during the spring. And they just don't pick them back up until the next summer. Now, I feel like guys are limiting themselves. The ribbon-tailed worm is something I fish pretty much year-round. It's something I've had a lot of success with in all the seasons. And whenever you keep yourself to only fishing it as a summer bait, you're keeping yourself out of something that does catch a lot of fish for 3/4 of the year. So, you know, experiment, fish this in different times of the year. Then as far as um, where to fish it, a lot of guys throw them on ledges, kind of offshore on a shaky head. Now, I do that a lot too, but somewhere that the ribbon-tailed worm really shines for me, other than that, is a brush pile. Now I know you're already thinking you can't fish them in a brush pile unless you're crazy, because the ribbon tail catches, it wraps up around a limb and it never comes off, and you end up with half your worm back at the boat. Well, I'm not throwing it in the middle of the brush pile. I approach brush piles a little bit different. I normally throw in the middle of the brush pile first before I kind of probe the edges and kind of the surrounding area of it. And my reasoning for that is a little bit different, and I will post a video about that soon, hopefully. Probably be on the water. I'll go over brush piles in depth, because that's kind of my home. I really like to fish a brush pile, something I've got a lot of time invested into, and somewhere I feel real comfortable. Now, whenever I pull up to a brush pile, like I said, I'm flipping something or I'm pitching something inside the brush pile within moderation. It's not in the thickest, hardest to reach place in there, but it is still kind of, somewhat in the middle. Now, I'm not throwing a ribbon-tailed worm in there. I'm throwing, something like a jig or a beaver or something like that, something that's not going to get hung up that easily. But before I leave, that's whenever I like to hit the corners, and I like to, just kind of hit the perimeter. Now that is whenever the ribbon-tailed worm really shines for me, especially the 10.5. And this is where we're going to get into the exact application for a 10.5-inch ribbon-tailed worm that I feel is its strongest place in my arsenal. We all know that it's not exactly the easiest to get a fish to come out of a brush pile. We know that normally it takes, something they really want to eat, a bigger meal, something that's really worth it for them to get out. And like I mentioned earlier, the action of the ribbon-tailed worm in itself is a very enticing action. And then you mix that with the fact that these don't get fished but in the summer, and never around a brush pile, and they're already something fish are pretty confident eating. You put all of that together and you have something along with a large profile. This is a very big meal for that fish, much bigger than this. And these dwarf beavers, they dwarf most jigs. They're gonna make a lot of things look very small. So you put all of that together, and fish come out of brush piles for me anyways. I have a lot of success doing that. Sometimes I will flip the beaver and a jig, and I'll run a square bill through it, and I might throw a chatterbait or a swim bait or a tube or God knows what inside of the brush pile, and it's not until I'm about to leave and I've already decided that there's no fish in there, and it's about that time whenever I pitch around a 10.5-inch ribbon tail around the corners, is whenever they finally come out. Now, the reason you don't want to throw these in the middle of them and in and around the limbs themselves, like I said, they wrap around really, really bad. That's just part of it. So that's why these really shine out in the corners, because they're not so apt to get hung up. You're not throwing them in the middle of that trash. Here's some colors that I like to keep in my ribbon tail worms, and some of these kind of go on for just regular worms in general. These are all going to be the 10.5-inch monster worms, because this is, like I said earlier in the video, this is kind of my, this is where I feel the most confidence in the bigger, larger size. So I have more colors in that size, since, it is kind of more of a confidence thing. First, I'll go with the standard colors. Your black and blue, I do keep a black and blue. That works in a lot of situations. Your watermelon seed or green pumpkin, whatever you've got, works fine, as long as you've got that nice green natural color. Next, I like some kind of green pumpkin red flake. It's kind of hard to see the red flakes in this, but it does have some red flake in it. Another color that's been really big for me, and probably one of my #1 colors, is this color here. This is Zoom, along with all of these. This is I don't know if they've changed the color or if I'm just blind, but these are ones I bought a long time ago, and they're called Red Bug, and then this one is called Plum Apple. But they're the exact same colors. The only difference you see is that this one's brand new and this one's probably 4 years old, if not older. The only difference I can see is one flake. They have identical green flakes, but the plum apple has a blue, and this one I don't see has any blue flake. I don't know if that's because it's old but I haven't seen Red Bug out in a long time, but now I see plum apple. So I don't know if this has replaced it or what, but it's the same exact color. It's just got a little bit of blue flake. But this has been a great color for me, this plum apple or Red Bug, whatever you have or want to call it. Next is a black with red flake. Now I do like red. Red is something that really does do good, especially the black and red. I like to have both the black and red and black and blue. I feel like a lot of times you can go back and forth and really dial in color whenever you're in those stained and muddy water conditions. Then of course your June bugs. I wouldn't call this a true June bug. I'm not sure what you call this color. If you go to the body, it just looks like black, and it has like turquoise color, turquoise kind of flake. I don't know if that's going to focus or not, and it's black. But whenever you get to the tail, that's whenever you can see the June bug. Now, like I said, I wouldn't call this a traditional June bug color, but it is kind of June bug-esque, and it's just kind of what I have. Then lastly, a big worm color in all categories, and that's just the Tequila Sunrise. This is such a good color to have. Purple is so overlooked anymore. If you haven't fished Tequila Sunrise in anything, I highly recommend it. Tequila Sunrise is a great color for your stained and muddy water. If you can throw black and blue, you can definitely throw Tequila Sunrise. And Tequila Sunrise is the purple that's in it is somewhat similar to the base color that's in the plum apple. It's very similar, just more red. But no, Tequila Sunrise is a great color in pretty much all worms, whether that's a ribbon tail, straight tail, whatever, trick worms, your probes, things like that. So those are the colors that I pretty much keep. It doesn't really change any, I don't believe. So that wraps it up for today's video on ribbon tail worms. If you got anything out of it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Here in the next month, I'll be out of here at the college dorm, and I'll be back on the water in the Ranger. Just consider subscribing. I'll have some in-depth how-tos on the water. So if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing. So thank you guys. God bless.